Fine. We started with something called as inheritance, and we understood that inheritance is a property or principle of your object-oriented programming, using which you should be able to create a new class using an existing class, and the newly created class would be able to access few or all the properties or members of your existing class. Fine. And we understood that colon is the symbol which is used for creating inheritance. That being said, anything which is defined to the right side of your colon is called as your parent class, and anything which is defined to the left side of your colon is called as child class. Understood? Good. So Prakriti, guys, is my voice clear or not? Is it breaking? Is it breaking or is it clear? It's clear, right? So Prakriti, good. So please close any other program apart from GoToMeeting on your machine. Fine, because GoToMeeting requires a lot of bandwidth, because it requires screen share, it requires voice transfer. So it should require a lot of bandwidth and your system's resources like memory and CPU. So close anything apart from GoToMeeting. Fine. Good. So what is the benefit of your principle of object-oriented programming called as inheritance? What is the benefit of inheritance? The benefit of inheritance is code reusability. Okay. That being said, for example, think that you have created a base class with 4 properties. Okay. Think that somebody asked you to create a dog class and a wolf class. Okay, both of them, they belong to the dog class, right? So you think that you might have created a base class called as dog, and you were creating the child classes called as wolf and fox from the existing class called as dog. Fine. That means all the existing classes features or the parent classes features would be by default inherited by your child classes, which means you need not define all of them again in your child classes. Fine. For example, think that you are creating a fox class and you are creating a wolf class. Both of them assume that they are barking. Okay, both of them assume that they bark. Fine. Then you need not define the bark property twice in your wolf class and your dog class. Instead, what you can do, you can create a parent class called as dog, and you can put everything which is common across your dog and fox and wolf inside your dog class, and you can inherit both the wolf and your fox classes from your dog class, right? Which will facilitate your code reusability. Making sense? Vishwa and Krishna, is it making sense? I don't see responses from you. Please respond. I know it seems to be weird, or it seems to be tough to answer for every question, but believe me, you will understand after some time that you're not getting distracted because of that. Okay. So that being said, your base class or your parent class can also be called as a base class. Fine. And your child class can also be called as your derived class. And that being said, you can use the term base class and your parent class interchangeably, and you can use the term child class and your derived class interchangeably. When you are referring to the parent class as base class, then you should refer to child class as derived class. And when you are referring to the base class as parent class, then you should be referring the derived class as child class. Understood? Good. That being said, let's try to understand how many different types of inheritance exist. Basically, there are 5 different types of inheritance. The first type of inheritance is called as single inheritance. Mostly one-to-one kind of inheritance. So the base class and your child class will have a one-to-one relation between each other in your single inheritance. Fine. For example, think that you have a father class and you have created a child class out of it. And most of the properties or members of your father class are being inherited by default by your child class. Fine. In this case, the relation between your father class and your child class is called as single inheritance. Fine. Good. The second type of inheritance is called as hierarchical inheritance. In your hierarchical inheritance, your more than one child class would be derived from an existing parent class. For example, think that you have a father class and you have created a son class and a daughter class out of the father class. Then in this case, the inheritance between your father, son and daughter is called as hierarchical inheritance because more than one child class is being derived from your existing parent class. Fine? Good. And the third type of inheritance is called as multi-level inheritance. What is multi-level inheritance? Multi-level inheritance is a type of inheritance where more than one level of inheritance exists. What does that mean? That means think that you have a father class and you have created a son class out of it, and out of the son class you have created a grandson class. So between your father and son you have the first level of inheritance, and between your son and grandson you have the second level of inheritance. So that means there are more than one level of inheritance existing in this scenario. That's the reason why it is called as multi-level inheritance. Understood? Good. The fourth type of inheritance is called as hybrid inheritance. So what is hybrid inheritance? Hybrid inheritance is an inheritance where more than one form of the above mentioned inheritances exist. Like you can have the single and hierarchical inheritance existing together, or you can have hierarchical and multi-level inheritance existing together. For example, think that there is a father class, and out of that you have created son class and daughter class, and out of your daughter class again you have created granddaughter and grandson class. So between your father, son and daughter you have hierarchical inheritance, and between your daughter, granddaughter and grandson you have hierarchical inheritance, and between your father, daughter and granddaughter, or father, daughter and grandson you have multi-level inheritance, right? So in this scenario you have more than one form of inheritance existing, right? So that's the reason why it is called as hybrid inheritance. Making sense? And the final form of inheritance is called as multiple inheritance. So what is multiple inheritance? You should understand that this is the best form of inheritance, and this is the most important form of inheritance when you are understanding the concept. Why so? Because multiple inheritance is not supported by your C# through classes. Fine. So what is multiple inheritance? Multiple inheritance is a scenario where your child class is being derived from more than one parent class, which means your child class will have more than one parent classes associated with it. For example, think that you have a father class and a mother class, and you have created a son class out of both the classes. This is called as multiple inheritance, and you should understand that multiple inheritance is not supported by your C#. For that matter, it is not supported by almost all the object-oriented programming languages like your Java or C# or PHP or whatnot. Almost all of them doesn't support multiple inheritance through classes. Understood? Good. So did we understand what is inheritance? C# supports only two inheritance. I did not get your question. Let me read through the question again. C# supports only two inheritance. No. It supports single inheritance. It supports hierarchical inheritance, multi-level inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. But it doesn't support only one type of inheritance called as your multiple inheritance. Fine. Where you are trying to derive your child class from more than one parent class. Got it? Vishwa, is it clear? Or do you have any question? Good. Fine. Then how to implement multiple inheritance in your C#? For that purpose, you have some other concept called as interface, which we will be looking at a bit later. Fine. Good. So that being said, the next concept associated with your object-oriented programming is called as abstraction. Fine. What is that? Abstraction. What is abstraction? Abstraction is a principle associated with your object-oriented programming through which you can impose some rules on your child classes, and however you are not worried about how those rules are implemented. Fine. So what is abstraction? Abstraction is a concept of object-oriented programming through which you will impose certain rules on all your child classes, and you are not, however, you are not worried about how they are implemented. They should mandatorily abide by all the rules, but you are not worried about how they are abiding by rules. Making sense? Only child classes. Good. So let's try to understand how abstraction is implemented using your C#. Fine. For that purpose, first you should understand something called as abstract method. Fine. What is a method? Sai Krishna, can you tell me what is a method? Please unmute yourself and tell me what is a method.
Is it a series of functions?
Series of statements.
Yeah, series of statements, yeah.
Series of statements which are executed sequentially under a single name, and your function or method may accept few parameters and it may return a value.
Yeah, right. And I
Fine.
forgot to note it down.
Good. So please remember it, because as I said yesterday, you'll be coming across this concept called as method or function multiple times. Okay. So please put in some time and try to remember it. Okay. And we understood that here uh, method has two important principles associated with it called as implementation and definition, right? So what does definition refer to? Definition refers to the name of your method along with type of parameters it is accepting and the return type of your function. And what is implementation? The statements which are executed by your method are called as implementation together. Fine. Yes or no? Good. So what is an abstract method then? If a method contains only definition and it doesn't contain any implementation, then that is called as abstract method. So it is there just for namesake. So it doesn't contain any implementation associated with it. It contains only definition, which means it contains a name, it contains the type of parameters it would be accepting, and it contains the return type, but it will not contain any statements to implement, right? So what is a abstract method? A abstract method is a method which contains only definition and which doesn't contain any implementation. Fine? Understood? Why do we require a method without any implementation? We'll come to that point a bit later. Fine? The second term which you should understand as part of your concept called as abstraction is called as your abstract class. Fine? So what is an abstract class? A class can be called as abstract class if it is abiding by three rules. Okay. First rule being it should be defined using the keyword called as abstract. What is that? It should be defined using a keyword called as abstract, and it should contain at least one abstract method. Fine. First principle, it should be defined using the keyword called as abstract, and second rule is it should contain at least one abstract method. Fine. What is the third property associated with your abstract class? You can't create a object or instance of your abstract class. Fine. So what is a abstract class? A class can be called as abstract class if it is defined using the keyword called as abstract, and if it contains at least one abstract method, and if you can't create any instance of your abstract class. Okay, the third one is the property associated with your abstract class. And finally, there is one other important property associated with your abstract class. What is that? Any class which is inheriting the abstract class should provide implementation to all the methods which are defined in your abstract class. Fine. What is the fourth principle associated with your abstract class? Any class which is being derived from your abstract class should mandatorily provide the implementation for your abstract methods which are defined in your abstract class. Making sense? Good. Then let's come back to the definition of your abstraction again. What is abstraction? Abstraction is a principle through which you will force all your child classes to implement something mandatorily, but you are not worried about how they are implemented, right? So that is what we are doing using your abstract class. So you have created some abstract methods which doesn't contain any implementation steps, and all the child classes of your abstract class should mandatorily provide implementation for your abstract methods, right? One second, please. Fine. Is it making sense? Good. That is how you implement your abstraction in your C#. Fine. Good. So now we understood that your base class methods should be rewritten or provided implementation in your child class if the base class is an abstract class, right? Now you should understand one other term associated with this. Okay, if you are rewriting the implementation of a existing parent class method, then that is called as overriding. Overriding. What is overriding? Overriding is a concept through which you will be rewriting the implementation or providing the implementation to a base class method in your child class. Understood? Good. As I told you yesterday, I got some Trojan installed on my machine. Okay, so to run multiple antivirus. So fine. So what is overriding? Overriding is a concept using which you will rewrite the implementation or provide the implementation to a base class method in your child class. Fine. We did not get there. Okay, just give me some time. Okay. We are ready to discuss the keywords, Vishwa. Okay, give it some more time. You'll understand it. Okay. So when you are saying that, you have to mandatorily provide implementation for the base class methods. If your base class in your child class, if your base class is a abstract class, by that you should understand that your base class abstract methods should be mandatorily overridden in your child class, right? Good. So, how are base class methods defined? How is the abstract method defined? We understood that abstract class should be defined using the abstract keyword, right? You should also understand that a abstract method also would be defined using a abstract keyword. Fine. Good. So if you have defined a base class method as abstract method, then it is mandatory that you should rewrite it or you should override it in your child class, right? So now, so are you taking any rough copy of notes, guys? I know this class is getting recorded, but I would strongly suggest you to note it down in a scribbling pad or any rough copy. Okay, so that there would be some reference material for revision. Fine. Otherwise, you'll tend to forget everything which we have discussed in the class if you don't revise it, and you can't revise it by looking at the recording every time, right? So you should have some scribbled notes or rough copy of the notes in your hand. Okay. Anyways, I'll be sharing this uh, mm, text documents or notes also, but still, I expect you to write some rough copy of the notes also. Understood? Good. That being said, you should understand that when you have defined a base class method as abstract, then it should be mandatorily overridden. Abstract, if you have defined it as abstract, it should be mandatorily overridden in your child class. Understood? Good. Now let's get into our other concept called as polymorphism. Fine. So what is polymorphism? Any idea? Anyone? Any idea what is polymorphism? Good. Yeah, method overloading is a type of polymorphism, but let's try to understand the concept called as polymorphism first. Fine. So, what is polymorphism? Okay, literally, when you are taking the literal meaning of your term called as polymorphism, you should understand that poly means multiple, right? Polygon. Okay, so what does poly means? Poly means multiple. And what does morph means? Morph means form. So in total, what does polymorphism means? Taking multiple forms. Fine. What does polymorphism means? It means taking multiple forms literally. Fine. Who is taking multiple forms here? In terms of object-oriented programming, your method would be taking multiple forms. Fine. Method would be taking multiple forms. How will your method take multiple forms? We understood the first way of method taking multiple forms. We understood that you can create a new method in your child class with the same name as the base class method by using overriding, right? If you have declared a method in your base class as abstract, then it is mandatory for your child class to implement it or override it. Correct? This is what we understood. However, if it is not defined using the abstract keyword, is there any other way to override a base class method? Yes, there is one other way to override your base class method even if it is not an abstract method. What is that? If you have defined your base class method using a virtual keyword, then you can override it in your child class. Understood? You can define the base class method as virtual or abstract for that to be overridden in your child class, right? Then what is the difference between virtual and abstract keywords? Any idea? Can you make a guess? If you have defined the base class method as abstract, then it should be mandatorily overridden, right? However, if you have defined it as virtual, it may or may not be overridden. If you want, you can override it, but if you don't want, you need not override it. It's not mandatory. Making sense? Somebody asked the question, Vishwa, did you understand what is the difference between abstract and virtual? And what is happening with Mr. Krishnakant? Is he there? Good. Awesome. So, as we understood, how can a method take multiple forms? Okay, here your method is taking two different forms. First form is in your base class and second form is in your child class, right? That being said, there is one other way to create multiple forms, or there is one other way for your method to take multiple forms. What is that? There is one other way for your method to take multiple forms. That is called as overloading. Earlier one was overriding. Now this one is called as overloading. What is overloading? Overloading is a concept of object-oriented programming through which you can create more than one method with the same name but different signatures or definitions. Fine. What is signature or definition associated with your method? A signature or definition of your method is name of the method along with type of parameters being accepted and the return type, right? So return type and parameters. Awesome. So now method overloading means that you can have more than one methods with the same name, but signature can vary. That means your parameter, number of parameters or type of parameters can change, or the return type can change. Fine. What does that mean? That means you can have more than one method with the same name but different signature or definition, right? And if you are having more than one method with the same name but different signature, then that is called as polymorphism, and the type of polymorphism here is method overloading. Now, did we understand what is the difference between method overloading and what is the difference between method overriding? Is it clear? Awesome. So now coming back to our polymorphism, how many types of polymorphism exist? There are two types of polymorphism basically. Conceptually, you have two different types of polymorphism. One is called as runtime polymorphism and other one is called as compile time polymorphism. Understood? One is called as runtime polymorphism and other one is called as compile time polymorphism. What is compilation? Before getting into compile time polymorphism, can you tell me if you know what is compilation or not? Compiling code. What does that mean? If you know, say yes. If you don't know, say no. But you should answer. What is compilation? Compiler compiles a code. I know that. I'm asking you what is compilation. Converting code from high level to assembly. Awesome. Let me give you literally what does here compilation means. Compilation is a process of converting the code which is written in one language to other language. Fine. And most common form of compilation is converting your code which is written in high level language to some code which is written in low level language like your assembly or binary or machine language code. Understood? Your microprocessor cannot understand your C# or Java. It understands only one language called as assembly language or binary language or machine language, right? So for making your code execute, you should first compile it so that it would be converted into some format which is understood by your microprocessor, right? Good. Changing regular to machine language. So this process of converting your high level language code to a low level language code like your machine language code is called as compilation. Fine. Now, what is your compile time polymorphism? If your microprocessor or if your framework at least is able to understand which form of method is taken in a given scenario during the compilation phase itself, then that is called as compile time polymorphism. So if you are able to understand which form of method would be taken in a given scenario during the compilation process itself, then that is called as compile time polymorphism. Fine, making sense? And if you are unable to understand which form of your method is taken in a given scenario until the code gets executed or until you run the code, then that is called as runtime polymorphism. Understood? Resources are allocated at compile time, early binding. Good, awesome. So let's not get into that point called as early binding now. So now, what is compile time polymorphism? Compile time polymorphism is a type of polymorphism where your form of your method taken in a given scenario is understood during the compilation process itself. Fine. And as Vishwa said, it is also called as early binding. Why it is called as early binding? Because compilation happens before execution, right? Understood? Good. Now, what is runtime polymorphism? If you are unable to understand which form of a method is taken in a given scenario or get which form of method gets executed in a given scenario until the code gets executes or until you run the code, then it is called as runtime polymorphism. That being said, how is compile time polymorphism implemented in your C#? Using your method overloading. Fine. Why method overloading is called as a example for your compile time polymorphism? Because in your method overloading, what is changing exactly is your implementation changing or is your definition changing? Your definition is changing, right? So when you are rewriting code in some other language, you will rewrite the definitions first, right? When you are rewriting the code, you will definitely understand if the definition is getting changed. Yes or no? That's the reason why here method overloading is called as compile time polymorphism, because it would be understood during the compilation itself. Fine. What is runtime example for runtime polymorphism, or how runtime polymorphism is implemented using your C#, using something called as method overriding, because here the definition is not changing and which both the methods exist and which method is called in a given scenario would not be understood until and unless you execute the code, right? That is the reason why it is called as example for runtime polymorphism. Somebody seems to have a question. What is the question? Can we get that in text document? So you are asking me whether this notes would be shared or not, right? Good. It would definitely be shared. Okay. However, I will not share the notes until I complete a given concept, because many times students get hyper enthusiastic and they start reading future concepts and they'll come up with doubts on future concepts which will confuse the remaining group. Okay, so once today's class is done, I'll send this notes to you, right? Good. So by now you should have understood what is inheritance and how inheritance is implemented in your C#, and what is abstraction and how abstraction is implemented using your C#, and what is polymorphism and how polymorphism is implemented using your C#. Understood? Good. Now there is one other concept associated with your polymorphism and inheritance together, that is called as interface. Let's try to understand what is an interface. As I said, my Windows got corrupted and it has corrupted my DVD writer drivers also. Okay, so I was unable to install Windows again and it throws error. Okay, fine. What is a interface? When we were discussing about a class, we understood that the class can also be called as a type, right? Why so? Because your class can be used as a template to create some other individual object, right? Good. There is during the discussion I explained you that there can be few other things in your C sharp which can be called as types. Yes or no? The second important type which you would be coming across in C sharp is called as interface. Fine. And again, definition of your interface remains almost similar to your class, but there are few differences. Let's try to understand what is a interface. A interface again is a template which is used for creating some other constructs based on it. Fine. However, the interface is different from your class in few points. Let's try to understand what are those points. Your interface contains only abstract methods. All the methods in your interface cannot have implementation. Making sense? And you can't create a instance or object of your interface. Fine? Understood? Now, there is $1,000,000 question. Okay. And believe me, you will remember me even after 10 years if you have attended today's class. Okay, whatever question, whatever interview you might be attending, whether it is for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, at least 80% of the interviews will have this question called as difference between abstract class and interface. Fine. So concentrate more. So what is abstract class and what is interface? We understood that a class can be called as abstract class if it is defined using the abstract keyword and the properties of your, and it contains at least one abstract method, and the properties associated with your abstract class are you can't create an instance of your abstract class, and all the abstract methods defined in your abstract class should be mandatorily overridden or implemented by your child class, right? Now, when we were discussing interface, we understood that you can't create an instance of your interface, and interface contains only abstract methods, right? Now, what is the difference between abstract class and an interface then? There are very major differences between your abstract class and an interface. First thing, your abstract class cannot be used for implementing multiple inheritance, or abstract class doesn't support multiple inheritance. Understood? We understood it earlier. However, multiple inheritance is supported using your interfaces. Making sense? The second difference, as we understood, you cannot contain a non-abstract or concrete method inside your interface, right? However, abstract class can contain concrete methods also, non-abstract methods also, along with the abstract methods. Making sense? That is the second difference. Understood? And if you have observed, there are few keywords called as public, private, protected, right? Internal. So there are few keywords like this, right? So these are called as access modifiers, and these are used to define what is the scope of access defined on a given class or a member or type or a member. Fine. That being said, all the members which are defined in your interface are by default public. All the methods or members defined inside your interface are by default public. Making sense? And you can't change it. Coming to your abstract class, by default, if you have not provided any access modifiers to a given class or a member defined inside it, then by default it will assume private access modifier. Fine. And you can change the access modifier anytime. Coming to your interface, by default it is public and it can't be changed, and coming to abstract class, by default it is private and it can be changed. Making sense? And your classes, whatever class it might be, contains two different methods which would be defined by default inside the classes. they are called as constructor and destructor. So your constructor is a method defined in your class which would be called every time you create an instance of it, and a destructor is a method defined in your class which would be called every time a new instance is getting destroyed. Fine. If your object is getting destroyed, you will call destructor. If your object is getting created, you will call constructor. Fine. So constructor and destructor are the methods which are defined inside your class by default, and abstract class is a class again. So it contains constructor and destructor. Making sense? But your interface doesn't contain a constructor and destructor. So at the end, what are the differences between your interface and the abstract class? Interface contains only abstract methods. However, your abstract class can contain concrete methods also. And interface supports multiple inheritance, but your abstract class doesn't support multiple inheritance. And by default, all the methods defined in your interface are public and they can't be changed. And by default, all the members defined in your abstract class, they are private and they can be changed. And your interface doesn't contain constructor and destructor, and your abstract class contains constructor and destructor. And Vishwa seems to have a question regarding fields. Member refers to field or function, anything which is defined inside your class. So the same set of rules applies for your fields also, or variables also, or properties also. Making sense? Yes, it definitely can have fields. Okay, but by default they are public. Fine. Making sense? Yes or no? Any questions? Any questions, anyone? Is it clear? Okay. We are left with one more concept called as encapsulation, which we would be looking at tomorrow. Okay. And as I said, yeah, usually